It's the Friday edition of Business Morning. Thank you for joining us. I'm Chimeze Obi Iwagu. Well, the Senate has approved the $22.79 billion loan request made by President Muhammadu Buhari. The upper legislative chamber okayed the request on Thursday amid objections from some senators. It will be recalled that President Buhari sent the loan request to the Senate in 2019, though it was rejected by the previous Senate under Bukola Saraki. This approval is coming even as global oil prices have been on the decline following the outbreak of the coronavirus. And the House of Representatives has mandated its Committee on Finance to investigate the alleged $30 billion annual revenue leakages arising from tax evasion and misuse and diversion of foreign exchange allocations by companies and other entities. The decision to launch the probe follows a motion of urgent national importance by the Chairman, House Committee on Finance, James Faleke, to rescue the country from revenue leakages.
The dwindling global price of crude oil, which in the last week has toggled between $47 and $51 per barrel, is a source of worry for lawmakers and the House of Representatives, majorly because of the $57 per barrel benchmark on which the 2020 budget is predicated.
Mr. Gaines, please say name. Ayes have it.
The lawmakers are also worried about other sources of revenue which are supposed to fund the budget. Chairman of the House Committee on Finance raises an alarm over an alleged annual revenue leakage of $30 billion, which he says is due to tax evasion and diversion of foreign exchange allocations by companies.
Let me give you an example of, let's say, a value of $100 million, let's say $50,000 pro forma invoice. And at the point of shipment, they collude with the exporter from the other country to reduce the value of that shipment. Meanwhile, they had secured $50,000 at the official exchange rate from Nigeria.
According to Mr. Faleke, these companies pay less customs duty based on the fraudulently reduced value of their shipment.
At the end of the year, when they have to prepare their final accounts, they, of course, inflate that value of the equipment in order to take capital allowance, so thereby reducing the company income tax 30%, which they are supposed to pay, and they have also taken advantage of reduced import duty.
The lawmakers are upset that this has been allowed to go on for many years.
The window for this type of corruption has been set up by a factor or different factors, some of them being legislative oversight, and I also believe that the central bank would need to streamline the window for our foreign exchange policy.
Even the Minister of Finance was making some pronouncements and declarations that our budget 2020 may have to be reviewed in the light of dwindling chances, economic chances of the budget.
The House further directs its committees on finance and banking and currency to look into the various originating documents maintained by the Central Bank of Nigeria, other banks, forex dealers, Federal Inland Revenue Service, importers and others, and to recommend penalties as deterrents to others. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
And as part of its efforts to offset the coronavirus impact, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries yesterday agreed on massive oil supply cut, paving the way for crunch talks with non-OPEC leader Russia, who still has to agree to the plan. The 14-member group led by Saudi Arabia decided on Thursday to cut production by 1.5 million barrels per day through the second quarter of the year. OPEC added the group would review this policy at its next meeting on June 9. The proposed cuts, which were at the top end of analyst expectations, are believed to be conditional on approval from Russia. Energy market participants have now turned their attention to a meeting of both OPEC and non-OPEC members today. Ahead of the OPEC Plus meeting, analysts were concerned a long-standing energy alliance between Saudi Arabia and Russia would come under intense scrutiny. Well, we'll see how that plays out eventually. Meanwhile, oil slid nearly 1% this morning as worries about global oil demand and economic growth slowdown caused by the coronavirus outbreak were heightened by concerns over non-OPEC crude producers not yet having agreed to cut output further to support prices. Brent crude fell 48 cents to $49.51 per barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate was down 38 cents at $45.52 per barrel. Non-OPEC states were expected to contribute 500,000 barrels per day to the overall extra cut. But Russia and Kazakhstan, both members of OPEC Plus, said they had not yet agreed to the deeper cut, raising the risk of a collapse in cooperation that has propped up crude prices since 2016. All right, during the week, the Aliko Dangote Foundation pledged a donation of 200 million naira to the federal government to help in containing the spread of the coronavirus outbreak in the country. The managing director and the chief executive officer of the foundation, Zara Yusufu, joins my colleague Temple Ashaju to talk more about this donation. Temple.
Thank you so much, Chimeze. Yes, we've got Ms. Zara Yusufu here to speak basically to this particular donation, which is a recurring thing from Mr. Aliko Dangote through his foundation every time we have issues like this ravaging the economy, ravaging the society. Thanks a great deal for joining us on the program, ma'am. So this is not the first time your foundation, Mr. Aliko Dangote's foundation, ADF in this case, is committing funds to pandemics like this. We saw in 2014 1 billion naira committed towards the fight against Ebola. We got some solutions there. You installed some cameras all over the place. And this time, the foundation is releasing 200 million naira to curtail the spread of coronavirus, otherwise known as COVID-19. What basically is the motive towards all of these initiatives from the foundation?
Thank you very much for having me this morning. So as you know, as you alluded to before, the Aliko Dangote Foundation is focused on primarily health. We also work in education and in empowerment. But as you rightly mentioned, in 2014, when the Ebola crisis hit us, the first people to be on the scene with money, resources, setting up the emergency operating center, screening devices, etc., was the Aliko Dangote Foundation. Today, we're faced with COVID-19. We're part of the donor community that is responding in terms of, financial resources, support capacity, etc. And so what we've decided to do is to do the type of response that we know we can do, that we've seen has been effective during the Ebola. And that's really around supporting Nigeria through the Nigerian CDC is leading the process of mobilizing what needs to be done immediately to shut this down and to prevent it from spreading. There are several intervention layers to this incident's action plan, and we are sure that we can have an immediate impact on the point of entry. We've done it before, and so that's what we're going to do. Point of entry means everything related to people coming into Nigeria. So as you saw, the cases that we have so far has been on the continent of Africa have been people coming in from abroad with the disease. So they've come in through the airport. So let's make sure that we have the right controls in place at the borders. How do we support that? Ambulances, whether it's building a containment center close enough to the airport so that people can be carried there in case they're unfortunately found to be carrying the disease. We also want to contribute to the software, like the surveillance system that helps identify cases in case they ever pop up, so that all this information is relayed back to the Nigerian CDC, and also in terms of training. So as you know, this is an emergency, so we need health workers to know, the frontline workers, how to test, how to detect, what the life-saving measures are. So we'll also be contributing to that training. So, we just know, Alhaji Aliko knows that, this is when Nigerians need to be mobilized to manage, a threat that is coming to our country. And so, here we are ready to lend that helping hand.
So are you releasing the bulk sum to the CDC, or it's going to be injected in cases, or you're going to just fund the project independently?
So some of the things are, for instance, some of the port of entry intervention is, for instance, buying ambulances. Okay. So instead of trying to give somebody money to go buy ambulances, we know we can procure ambulances immediately right now. And, as a private company, we always feel like we can negotiate and, get good deals and good prices. So some of it will be actual donations of the things that are on this point of entry list, and some of it will be contributing money directly to the institutions that are managing the work.
Okay, so I understand there's a breakdown of this particular figure because, again, you're targeting 3 key areas, as you mentioned, protecting the borders now, and then which is national health security, and, of course, surveillance and training of the health workers. Give us a breakdown of how the fund will be spread.
Okay, so the point of entry intervention is $124 million naira. The surveillance piece is 36 million naira, and the training of the workers is 48 million naira. So it's about 208 million naira in total.
I understand that we still have some other areas where funding, support, is necessary or highly needed, as we still need some more isolation centers, which we do not have. We need more of training of the volunteers who are probably not health workers or who hadn't even had that experience before. Are you looking to expand your support towards this course and that's a line?
So you're right. There are several other intervention points. There's 9 intervention areas that the Nigerian CDC has put on this action plan. Some of it is around coordinating all the donor response. Some of it is around research. Right? So do we understand really what's going on with this COVID-19 with us here in Nigeria? Some of it is around case management. When people are sick, what kind of drugs are we going to try to give them to make sure that they're okay? So this is our first, the whole plan has been costed by the NCDC to be about 1.6 billion naira. We're giving it a first 200 million. Let's see if more is needed. But also, we want others to contribute. Other people are involved in this fight. It's not just the Dangote Foundation. DFID, the World Bank, which hosted the meeting on Tuesday in Abuja, USAID, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Other people are actively engaged in this fight. So it's not just us, but really the appeal is we want people to know what's happening. We want other Nigerians, other Nigerian foundations, and other organizations who want to support this effort to make sure that Nigeria stays as COVID-free as possible, or get it out of here as quickly as we can, to also join the fight. So it's, this is a joint coordinated effort.
Okay, so there are only a few states that are close to the borders or that even have entry points to Nigeria. Right. Is this initiative in support of, channeling funds to them eventually as well? Are these the states that you will actually track in terms of the point of entry?
So you're right. So we have 6 international airports. Okay. Those we've already, from back in the Ebola days, equipped with cameras. We just actually last year did an upgrade and a refresh of all of those, did the training for the port health workers, and made sure that all those cameras, the ones that we bought, are effectively working in all these 6 airports. Now, there's 8 priority states that have been defined as being COVID susceptible, and of course, those are the ones around Lagos State. And for instance, the surveillance software that I was just describing, the 36 million naira SORMAS, that part will go to states like Ogun and the ones that are around Lagos to make sure that that surveillance is there. So we don't have people coming in from Nigeria, from abroad where the disease is, say in Bauchi. I'm picking on Bauchi. That's where my mom is from. We don't have an international airport there. So the usefulness of setting up a whole detection center there doesn't really apply. Right. So the focus is really on where the potential danger areas are.
How about the seaports? Because you've spoken more about the airports. So how about the seaports where we get cargoes and, of course, most of all of this heavyweights coming in through?
So the system really does target the seaports also. Okay. And we're working very closely with the Lagos State Commissioner of Health. They're actually doing a meeting today, visiting the Emergency Operating Center and doing like an update meeting right now as I'm here talking to you. So the seaports are part of the port of entry areas. There's a the same system that is in the airport is in the seaport. So the checking people's temperature, making sure that we have the testing equipment close by, those things have already been deployed at the seaports.
Okay. Okay. We know that when you address the issue of Ebola, funded it with $1 billion naira in 2014, part of the things you did was to set up the center, the testing center or thereabout in Yaba. You actually equipped it with a whole lot of equipment. You got cameras, you had... do we have cases where you apply some of those equipments in this particular project as well?
Well, the center just went through a refresh. So Lagos State actually refurbished the center because we realized 2014 was a long time ago. And so, you know, there's been upgrading of that particular EOC. Yes. But the idea of an isolation center where you would take people who need to be quarantined, that's already been implemented because the person who was identified last week with the virus was taken there and the center was up and running. So that was one of the things that Lagos State quickly put together to make sure that we have to be ready. If anybody comes in and anything is wrong, we have to have a place to take them. Now the idea is how do we improve that, make more of that, and make sure that we have enough in case anything happens, God forbid.
Okay, so we know that the umbrella body of the Dangote Foundation is a Pan-African business. You've got your tentacles spread across Africa, across the world, I should say, because you're extending into Asia gradually. And so we've also heard of the index case in South Africa. Some folks, one chap who came in from Italy, and of course, he also is being quarantined. So are you envisaging a situation where you will have to expand this particular fund in the future as you did in 2014?
Well, so just to relay the size of the intervention in 2014 versus now, it's true that in 2014 that billion naira was really a Pan-African effort. A lot of it was, you know, taking volunteers to go and support the health system in Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Guinea, which had been decimated. Right? So it was a different effort. Right now, for this containment effort, South Africa has it under control. So does Senegal, which is where one of the other cases were, and where we do have a Dangote business. Yeah. But if we're ever solicited, if our help is ever needed, we're here. We're in touch with our colleagues in all those different countries on a daily basis. And if there's anything that we need to do, we're ready to...
brought under consideration. Yes. Okay, so here's another point. Every time we get to have this epidemic, you address these things. What then happened to this equipment, these facilities? You just let them be?
No. As you can see, the cameras have been operating since 2014. We have all the cameras that we bought are in every airport. So if anybody walking into Murtala Mohammed here in Lagos, where we live, the camera is there with the screen. Yeah. That we did that, and we maintain it. We make sure it's there. Exactly. It's not going to be a wasted effort. In terms of the emergency operating center, the structure was already there from Lagos State, and really the goal is let's make sure that we have what we need when we need it. The biggest investment is in people and their capacity to react. So that capacity is never going to be wasted. And let's even say we spend a lot of money training people on how to deal with coronavirus. And there is no coronavirus, and that threat is gone, just like the Ebola threat is gone. Who knows what the next one would be, but as long as we have trained people ready to deal with this,
the impact on human capital that you're more concerned about.
Absolutely.
Okay, I mean, we know that researchers are currently on their toes trying to get solutions to these R&D labs all over the world are now more active than ever before because of coronavirus. Some folks said on TV yesterday that this could take the solution or a cure to coronavirus could actually take up to a year. What do you make of that? Are you going to commit, more support towards that kind of cause as well?
So we haven't really tackled the research angle yet in anything that we do in the Aliko Dangote Foundation. So, for instance, we haven't funded research on malaria, for instance. We haven't funded research on... We have a lot of health challenges on this continent, and research isn't something that we have yet gotten to,
Okay.
because often the immediate needs of dealing with what's happening right now takes up a lot of energy and resources. But I think this is something that eventually we would have to get into, because, you know, if you read what scientists are saying, the next epidemic or pandemic is around the corner. So supporting research and, you know, making sure that we have the right institutions that can provide vaccines and solutions is something that we'll eventually take a look at.
Okay, we've got about 60 seconds to the end of the program. You've done a whole lot, funding all sorts of projects across the country at local government levels, at subnationals. You've done a whole lot. How are those facilities actually faring at this point in terms of maintenance? Because that's the challenge that we get to have in this country.
So in terms of the investments that we've made, for instance, with, let me start with my favorite program, which is the micro grants that we give to women in, the goal is to reach 1,000 women in each of the 774 local governments in Nigeria. We just recently did some states in the north. A couple of years ago, we did here in Lagos. In Lagos, we did 2,000 women per LGA because Lagos is so densely populated. And the last impact assessment that we did was, again, making us feel extremely confident about how well women are using these resources that we give them to grow their businesses. So that's something that we're very proud of. In terms of the physical things that we've built, for instance, the Ibadan Business School, the BUK Business School, refurbishing the dorms at ABU, all those I went to check. I happened to be in Ibadan a month or two ago. They're still there. Everything is good.
It was actually good you mentioned the women's support, because today is Sunday is International Women's Day, and so we know that Aliko Dangote Foundation tentacles everywhere. Well, we really wish you more grace to your elbows. Thanks a great deal for giving insight into all of the initiatives you're actually putting out there at the foundation. Wish you all the very best. Ms. Zoera Yusufu. Back to you now, Chimizi.
Temple. Well, when Business Morning returns, we will look at African Union's goal of achieving inclusive and sustainable economic growth and development through its Economic, Social and Cultural Council. Just stay with us.